Hello and welcome. Let's talk tabletop. Today's topic or question comes from Blazerz144. Says, what do you think about cursed items and how do you handle them without it feeling cheap? Now, cheap, I assume, is you meaning that if it comes into a player's possession, that they get immediately angry because there was no warning. So, first of all, what is a cursed item? A cursed item, by and large, is usually an item that, while useful, also has some sort of drawback to it. Like, in the comments somewhere, somebody was saying, if you had a cursed wand of magic missile, maybe it's really powerful compared to other wands of magic missile. Maybe it's a 1d4 plus 2. But in exchange, whenever you use it, it fires a magic missile back at its user. And the only way to dodge a magic missile is to have the shield spell, and that's like the only thing that prevents it by and large. Or vampiric weapons are a big contender. Like you've got this sword, whenever you hit somebody with it, however much damage you do, you gain that back in health. But maybe a cursed vampiric sword, you would gain that back in health, but then like every 3 days your maximum health would go down by 1. And wizards beware, you've got 4 health to start with. You might hand that to a fighter, but their HP is kind of their selling point. So if they've got 80 HP and they're using a vampiric sword, 3 days from now you got 79, 3 days from now you got 78. And at most, not all, at a lot of tables that I've been to, cursed objects are bound to whoever picks them up. Like if you get like a cursed sword and you throw it off a cliff, it'll appear in your bags later. You can't get rid of it. That's your curse. It's like Minecraft, the curse of binding. You can't unequip something with the curse of binding on it, because otherwise you might pick up something, you identify it. It's a cursed whatever, say vampiric sword. It's a cursed vampiric sword. Oh, and they throw it away because they're not going to want to use it, or they'll hear the word cursed no matter what it is and throw it away. Well, why should I even put it in my game? Because no player's going to keep it regardless of what the trade-off is. So usually it makes for a good little side story arc to try and get rid of a cursed object or item. But how do you do that without being cheap? Well, one way is ultimately to hear about it. And let's keep on with the vampiric sword. Say it drains 1 health from your maximum HP every 3 days until it kills you. That is its curse. So you've only got X amount of days to get rid of it before it just sucks away your life entirely. It could be like a legendary object. You could hear about it in a cursed scroll, or not a cursed scroll, but like a scary scroll somewhere that a vampire lord had this weapon and he slayed all his enemies with it, and it was extracting a heavy toll from whoever so that touched the blade, etc., etc. It needs to have like a story behind it to where oh, that sounds really powerful, we should go look for it. And then when they pick it up, it's a cursed object, because yes, it is powerful, but there's a drawback to it. So of course there is. Aw, damn it. So the second half of that story is getting rid of it again before you become its next victim. Another thing you can do is visual warnings. And this is a classic thing, especially for objects that can kill you over time. If you're old enough, and I'm dating myself, if you're old enough to remember like classic Looney Tunes cartoons where the establishing shot of the cartoon is like a desert and there's just hills of sand, or out in like the Nevada desert or the Arizona desert where there were like steers and you can see like dead steer skeletons with the big horns laying out in the cracked ground. But the skeleton always seems to be right next to an oasis. It's like, why didn't he drink the water? How did he die? That always bugged me as a kid, because there was always a skeleton right next to the oasis, which only serves to tell you, if you think about it, that the water is bad, you know? I think there was even one, I don't know if it was Bugs Bunny or some other Looney Tunes cartoon, but they get on their knees and they try to get some water to drink it, and the skeleton next to them goes, "I wouldn't do that, bub. Look what happened to me." And they have to drop the water because obviously it's poisoned water. You know, why else would you die right next to a source of water in the middle of the desert? Well, the water's bad. So if you had like a vampiric sword or something that was bound to kill you, you could find the remains of that hero. And if you've got a cleric on you, they can probably say, oh, this person died of some sort of negative energy ray or some sort of negative, some stat-reducing horrible necromancy. Or maybe it's like a skeleton leaning up against the wall and there's like just piles and piles of dead goblin remains all around the room. Like, they obviously did not get a bead on this guy, but there's just dozens of them all over the place. Well, suppose you had like a sword that was a 3d8 to do damage, but every time you killed something, you get a little bit weaker, a little bit weaker, a little bit weaker, until your strength is 0 and you can't physically hold yourself up. So you lay there unable to stand until you starve to death. You know, there were so many goblins, it was either do that or let them stab you to death, you know. So there's I don't know, maybe if that was me, I'd probably let like the last one let them kill me because I wouldn't be able to move anyway. Because, people that think death is the worst punishment know nothing of suffering. So if you were working your way down so far that you couldn't physically move, you might let the last goblin kill you, if only to put you out of your misery. But set up a room or something like that. Or if you've got like a ring of fireball or something, it's like, yeah, you can shoot an 8d8 fireball once a day with this ring or whatever, which is kind of like a ring of wizardry, really. But it's got a 5% chance of backfiring and cooking your stupid ass. It's like, oh, 5%'s nothing. And then you roll the 1, and then you hit yourself in the face for 64 fire damage, and you burst into flames and die. Well, you might find that ring on a cooked skeleton somewhere and say, gosh, and the rogue's like, yeah, there's no fireball spells here, and there's no signs of struggle, there's no footprints, and we haven't run into any enemies here that can cast magic. I wonder what happened to this poor guy. And they're like, oh, dibs on his bag. I get his staff. And whoever's the least magically adept but has used magic items for something, it's like, oh, it's a cursed ring of fireball. Yeah. It's only got a 5% chance to hit me in the face instead. And, it takes up one of your ring slots, and you can't get rid of it if it's a cursed object, at least at my table. You can't just drop cursed objects. But, it's only got a 5% chance of cooking me. I'm going to shoot that guy in the face with an 8d8 fireball. And then they blow themselves up, and it's fucking hilarious. But that's a cursed object for you. And you've already dropped kind of the hints that there's something wrong with it. So leave evidence of what it can do to you if it's misused, or if it's used at all. And obviously there is Remove Curse, which I think in D&D Beyond, I had it in my notes. It's a 3rd level spell that lets you throw the object away. It takes off the attunement, and don't get me started about attunement, because that's fucking stupid. Attuning magic items to yourselves, fuck you. It unattunes the cursed object from you so you can safely throw it away, but it doesn't remove the curse itself. Like, there's probably like disenchant and other specific spells that could turn it into a mundane object so you can throw it away, or to get rid of the curse itself so you can enjoy the powerful item as it is, but that's no doubt higher level magic, or the wish spell or something like that. Something that will scrub the curse off of it, but Remove Curse would at least let you throw it away so it can't affect you anymore. And And if you think about it, using my rule set, the Keyblade would be a cursed object because only a certain person can wield it, and if they throw it away, it just reappears in their hands. That's kind of a curse. You could never put it down, never throw it away. That would suck. But, of course, that's more like a destined object. That's something you want to be near you, but it acts kind of like a curse if you think about it. So I guess those are my thoughts on cursed objects. Without making them cheap, they can hear about it. You can show visual warnings that something's up. You can leave evidence that that item killed the previous user. And by the time they pick it up, they identify it, they equip it, they put it on, they use it, whatever. They're gonna realize something's up if they don't have somebody in the party that can identify magic items or identify curses or anything like that. Like whenever you hit it, you hit that goblin and suddenly 8 of your HP is restored. Yes, all right. And then a couple of days later when they get up, you can just like pass them a note, hey Trogdar, your 80 health is now 79 health and you can't recover that extra 1 ever again. Something bad's happened to you. You feel a little queasy up until you eat after breakfast and then you're fine. But they might start wondering, oh God, what's this sword doing to me? What's happening to me at first? Until they figure it out, until they get examined by a healer or a priest or a cleric, or you approach holy ground and this sword starts shaking and sweating blood because it's an evil object or a cursed object. Whatever it happens to be, that can be the mystery for a while. It's like, yeah, you've got this super magic ring, but you feel queasy in the mornings, or you feel sluggish during your reflex saves, or whatever it happens to be. You don't have to explicitly tell them what the curse is unless they cast like identify or detect magic or whatever it happens to be to strictly tell them the rules of it. It can just be a shady looking magic item. Like a culty dagger or something that's like, it's got a black blade and it sweats blood, and instead just describe it as something really nasty. It's obviously a cursed object, but they still use it. You never know. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. So I hope that helped, Blazer, and I guess that's all I have to say about that. So how do you guys handle cursed objects? Put that in the comments below for me. Have you ever had one forced on you? Have you ever used one as a DM? How did that go down? Did they destroy it? Did they get rid of it? Did they use it with gusto? Was the price to be paid okay with them? Tell me all about that below so we can kind of inspire each other on what cursed objects and cursed magic items are and what they can be used for. And if there's any topics or questions or things that you'd like me to talk about in the future, this show is run on the comments below that you guys give. So, let's talk tabletop. And until next time, keep gaming.